098. Parastatal Africa, giving your business a helping hand to greater heights. Parastatal TV, promoting the role of state corporations.
Hello and thank you for tuning in to Parastatal TV. You are watching The Frontline. I am Mugure Kamau. Now today I am honored to meet the Cabinet Secretary in one of the key sectors in our country. He happens to have been a practicing lawyer for 20 years, having served both locally and internationally. He is the President's best choice for the Irrigation and Water Ministry. Welcome.
Thank you.
It's an honor to have you with us.
Thank you very much.
We are honored. Now straight to the point, El Nino will be coming to Kenya. It's no longer a rumor now. So, and the government will need around 15.5 billion shillings to cater for the emergence that comes with the rains. How is the ministry prepared?
We are actually part of the multi-agency team that have been set up under the chairmanship of His Excellency the Deputy President. We have also included other ministries, the Ministry of Transport, to ensure that our infrastructure, if affected, is intact or it is rehabilitated. And we have also included the Ministry of Interior for purposes of movement of populations, where it's necessary to avoid displacement of the people by floods. We also have the Ministry of Defense that will be involved in supplying personnel and equipment to help alongside the Ministry of Devolution that will be giving us the National Youth Service personnel and equipment also, particularly to desilt dams. This would increase storage for the excess water that we expect from harvesting from the El Nino rains. So all these ministries are working together. We are also, as national government, working closely with county governments, and on the national steering team, we have had governors represented by their chairman, Governor Munya. We've also had Governor Gashagwa from Nyeri, and we've had a roundtable meeting, national government with the county governments, with development partners, as well as private sector. So we have a multi-pronged approach that cuts across all sectors to deal with this situation. What we're saying is that El Nino is not a rumor. It is coming. We are already seeing the signs of unusual rain, and these rains will get unusually heavy as we go into towards the end of this month and mid next month. The experts have told us that that will be the peak. So we are all working together, and we need all hands on deck to ensure we cope with this situation. So all we want to do is to assure Kenyans that as national government, in partnership with county governments and our development partners, we have a plan and we have programs already put in place. Speaking for my ministry, we have already started strengthening dikes, particularly in flood-prone areas. Last week I was in Kisumu County, and with Governor Ranguma we went round a Hero irrigation scheme. We went through Nyando and even met Mama Serikali Saidia all the way to her home. We are putting up dikes along River Nyando. This will stop the river bursting its banks and actually affecting the people as it has done year in, year out. In Budalangi also, we were able to tour Busia with Governor Ojamo, and we are already raising and strengthening dikes along River Nzoia. That is where we normally have problems. We are also, through National Water Corporation, setting up check dams in Narok. And apart from that, through the National Irrigation Board also, we are looking at excavators going to flood-prone areas like Nyando and Kisumu to ensure that we clear the canals, we do desilting and clear the waterways so that we avoid flooding around the lake. So these are some of the things that we are putting in place now, but we know that the Ministry of Health is also putting in necessary preparations, because when you have excess water, we also have disease outbreaks. So we have the Ministry of Health stocking up drugs and preparing to counter any situation that could arise. Equally, our counterparts in the education sector are also preparing, because most likely schools could be affected, some classrooms could come down, and we are all working together. So these are the preparations we have put in place. But our prayer is that it will not be as severe as it was in 1997 when we lost lives, we lost property worth billions. And all we are telling Kenyans that wherever you are, please remain alert. If there's something you can do to move from a risk area, please do so. And we also expect landslides apart from floods. And this has happened around Mount Elgon, it's happened in areas like Muranga. So those living on the slopes should also take care. Thank you.
Okay, now away from that, the ministry has come up with a review of the water bill. What really inspired this review, and what impact is it going to have?
First of all, we haven't had major reforms in the water sector for many years, until 2002, when we had the current water bill passed. And it is this bill that actually brought huge reforms in the water sector. And the water sector reforms that this country has experienced for the last 10 years have been phenomenal in transforming this sector, in separating the issue of regulation from the issue of management, and ring fencing actually water finances that previously were under municipal councils, and there was a lot of mismanagement of the funding. This in itself boosted donor confidence in the water sector, and we saw a serious rise in terms of financing in the water sector. We used to have a budget of about 4 billion then, but by now we are talking about 40 billion. So this has grown because of the reforms that have been put in place. But as we speak now, we need further reforms in the water sector. And the current bill that the National Assembly has passed is before the Senate now. It is a vital piece of legislation for the sector, because it is really the legislation that will align the water sector to the current constitution. So we are asking the Senate, just the way the National Assembly under the leadership of Honorable Amina prioritize the water bill. We are hoping the Senate will also prioritize it. We know that the bill has already gone through the first reading. It has been tabled before the Senate, and it's undergoing public participation so that we get the input of Kenyans. It is a very vital bill. It will transform the water sector. It is the bill that is going to create new institutions. And of importance is really the Water Harvesting and Storage Authority. We haven't had an authority specifically for water harvesting. For a long time we haven't had a water harvesting policy. But now with El Nino coming, we all know how important water harvesting is, how important water storage is. Kenya being a water scarce country, the excess water we'll get through El Nino should be turned from a risk into a resource. It can turn from a curse into a blessing. So this is why we are asking our legislators, particularly our senators now, to prioritize the water bill. Let's have these new institutions in place. Let us transform the water sector and ensure the realization of the water rights under our new constitution. Thank you.
Now, technology happens to play a very big role when it comes to improvement of services.
Yes.
And in water, we have seen improvement when it comes to like billing of water.
Yes.
What other technology advancements does the ministry have in plan?
I think we have one of the biggest challenges in the ministry is the issue of non-revenue water. We are trying to increase access to water because it is the fundamental duty of the state under Article 21 of our Constitution to ensure access to water for all Kenyans. It's now a constitutional right. It no longer depends on the generosity of the national government or the county government. It's the duty of the state, the national government and the county government, to ensure that we have this access.
Yeah.
I believe in increasing access, we must also be accountable for the water that we are able to give to Kenyans.
Yeah.
And in some areas, you would find that almost 50% of the water supply is unaccounted for.
Yeah.
So this problem of non-revenue water is one of our biggest challenges, and we are partnering with our development partners, particularly countries that are so advanced technologically that we can bring down the problem of non-revenue water from the current almost 50% to like we were in Sweden, and you look at the non-revenue water, it's not beyond 5%. We have counties like Nyeri that are doing very well, that are 20%. But we also have counties like Mombasa that are doing very badly at 48%. Others are at 50%, like in Garissa. So we must use technology to see how we can bring down this issue. And we are partnering now with quite a number of international companies. But also we have our own Kenyans who have the necessary expertise. Giving the example of we have a young man called Martin Nangole who is in charge of ICT at the Nairobi Water Company. He was able to actually introduce through ICT a mechanism that has increased revenues for Nairobi Water by almost 30%.
Wow.
So through technology we can achieve this, and we want to encourage more water companies to use technology to bring down the problem of non-revenue water and other challenges also. We also want to use technology to improve on the quality of water. For a long time we've been relying on chlorine.
True.
For the longest, I mean since we were kids. The only thing we use is mixed chlorine in our water. But we know of countries that are using other advanced technologies that purify their water to a level that you can drink water from the tap.
Kenya experiences some water conflict resources. What does the ministry plan to do about that?
I think it is normal, particularly in the arid and semi-arid lands, where you have pastoralists fighting over water. And it is one area that we are addressing very keenly through construction of more dams or more boreholes, so that communities do not have to cross over to other territories in search of water and pasture and bring about conflict. It is very saddening to see the Samburu and the Turkana fighting, or the Turkana and the Pokot fighting over water. So it is our duty also as national government and county governments to work together to ensure provision of water to avoid this kind of conflicts. But apart from the traditional conflicts that have been there, we also have now conflicts between counties, inter-county conflicts. You have the people of Murang'a County asking, why are you taking our water to Nairobi? You have the people of Taita Taveta asking, why are you taking our water to Mombasa? And so on and so forth. You have the people of Marakwet asking, why are you taking our water to Eldoret Town? And we have to work together. And this is where national government comes in to work with county governments. First of all, to make it very clear that water is a national resource. Water services is a devolved function for the county governments. But the water resource and the development of that resource still is a national function. So where we've had such conflicts, we have come in as national government, and we are working very closely with county governments to avoid that inter-county war, First of all, by ensuring that we have more water. We are building more dams. And presently, we have mega dams across the country. In Mombasa, we are developing the Mwache Dam. That will really increase our water storage capacity in Mombasa. We also are working on the Northern Collector Tunnel from Murang'a to Ndakaini. We want to boost the water supply to Nairobi by over 200,000 cubic meters. That will completely close the water deficit problem in Nairobi. Of course, we are dealing with the issues the Murang'a people have raised. And we are looking at Pokot. We have Sioi Dam. It's a mega dam that will actually add a lot of water in Pokot. In Nakuru recently, through the Italian government, the Italian Prime Minister came here and signed with our president a pact where we're going to have Itare Dam in Nakuru. That is going to supply water to over 800,000 residents of Nakuru. So doing all this, we will bring down the conflict. We will, as long as we succeed to give each county more water, counties will stop fighting over water. So the issue really is to increase access in terms of infrastructure development, but also to increase the quality of that water. And this is what we're doing presently. Thank you.
Now lastly, Bwana Mheshimiwa, you had one of the key dockets. I would love you to look at this camera and give your final words to Kenyans.
I think we want to assure Kenyans that the Kenyan government is committed to the realization of the SDGs, particularly goal number 6 of water and sanitation to all Kenyans by 2030. That I can assure you. We are working day and night, and I'll go to every county. I'll work closely with every county government to ensure realization of this goal. Thank you very much.
That was such a candid conversation with the Cabinet Secretary, Water and Irrigation. It's always a pleasure to have you with us. Thank you for keeping it Parastatal TV. I am Mugore Kamau. See you next time.
Parastatal TV, promoting the role of state corporations.
Today, our great nation grows, so does her appetite for energy. If Kenya can fulfill her energy needs today, she will guarantee her future. When energy is clean, our environment is preserved. When energy is affordable, industries grow. When energy is reliable, business booms. When Kenya's energy is sustainable, we secure our future. From our nerve center in Upper Hill, networking with our African brothers and establish a plan for affordable power development. Guaranteeing you quality energy for a quality life. That's our duty. That is our promise to you. The Energy Regulatory Commission, guardians of the energy promise.
Parastatal TV, promoting the role of state corporations.
The energy sector is a key player in Kenya's economic development. The Energy Regulatory Commission is the commission mandated to run operations of this sector, including regulating the energy, protecting the consumer, investor, stakeholders, and monitoring the industry. Parastatal TV interviewed the Director General, Engineer Joseph Nganga, who expounded further on the mandate of the commission.
We deal with issues relating to downstream petroleum and the power sector and renewable energy. In renewable energy, we also focus on issues of energy efficiency, what is popularly referred to as demand side management, how people use the energy efficiently. And we have been in existence for some 8 years or more. We are the successor of the old ERB, which was dealing with electricity regulation before. But after the energy policy of 2004, we now cater for the whole sector other than the upstream of petroleum. In the normal market, the price movement should be by supply and demand. You'll actually be surprised that in some other countries, the prices where there's no regulation can change as many as 3 times in a day, the pricing. So in our particular case, regulation stabilizes that because every 14th of the month we put a cap on the maximum prices that will be charged on the 3 commodities, and we expect that that is not exceeded. There are sanctions if anybody were to exceed those limits, and what we expect is that competition by the oil marketing companies will be within the cap that we have set. So the stability is related to how the international market prices change. And in this case, what we do is that we apply the prices that have been imported in the country in the previous month. And therefore, the volatility one may see is a reflection of what is changing in the market price, in international market prices. We regulators have mentioned the power sector and the petroleum sectors. So what that means is that we issue licenses for people to enter into the market. And therefore, for instance, if you take a case of the petroleum sector, we will license somebody to be able to operate a retail station, like a pump station. And we start actually by approving the designs that will be used to ensure that, for instance, it's not a threat to the safety and security of citizens or other facilities. So we would approve the designs that one would use to construct the facility, and thereafter we will give a license for supply of the business. And if one does not comply with the requirements of the license, we can be able to suspend or even revoke the license, as the case may be. In the power sector, we do the same. And in this case, we look at the whole supply chain from the generation, transmission, and distribution. And we have licensed our particular players in each of the components. For instance, the generation, of course, the biggest player there is KenGen, who would control over 70% of the market. So in various stations, we are licensed them to operate. And also there is competition there because we have independent power producers in the country, and we equally license them. For the transmission, we have licensed Ketraco and Kenya Power, and for distribution, it's only Kenya Power who are currently the key player in that area. Recently, there was an application by a small solar company in Kisi for the supply, and we have also licensed that. So essentially, in a regulated market, you control the players and you control the price to ensure that consumers get value for money. Well, the whole concept of the independent power producers, of course, is part of public-private partnership. But the real driver of the PPP is Treasury with respect to the new law. There's a new law that specifically addresses that area. But what it may mean is that if that happens in the power sector, then of course we take over with respect to our mandate on licensing, auditing, and that auditing could be both technical and financial, and providing the requisite approvals that would be necessary for them to undertake their business. And this of course would apply for a long time, maybe 20 to 30 years. We are working with UNEP. In fact, we are the driver, working with UNEP, essentially to control pollution. in a nutshell, that's what the whole initiative is all about. And it addresses two specific areas. The first one is the product, in this case diesel. And what the Commission has done is to ensure that we now have specifications of diesel that is as good as what you can get in the European market, 10 ppm of sulfur. And then there is also the issue of the vehicle themselves, so that we can be able to have a double-pronged approach to address the pollution issue. And this is where now the age of the vehicles comes in, because obviously the older the vehicle, the more inefficient it tends to be. So combined with the fuel, we're having a program where we can be able to look at areas, how we can be able to incentivize consumers so that they can have newer vehicles, more efficient vehicles, and of course ensure that the fuel is good to be able to minimize the impact of pollution at our level. Yes, we do. NEMA is a key body that we work with, because all the projects that we have to license ordinarily must have an environmental management license from NEMA. And what we do with them is that when they get proposals for various projects, we are part of the authorizing chain. So they'll give us a project proposals ourselves, and we will be able to make our comments at a very early stage to them, with respect to any comments that we may have on their feasibility, technical or financial or otherwise. And therefore, by the time they are providing the license, giving the particular parties licenses, we have already made our comments. And usually, therefore, we don't have many strong objections by the time the applicants come to the Commission for licensing. But in our mandate, in law, we are required to take account of the license that is provided by NEMA in our approval. We have made significant gains to ensure that our services are as close as possible to consumers, and they are as efficient as possible, so that we can be able to serve our consumers who are distributed countrywide. For instance, in the application of licensing, for the various investment that one may be able to do, we would want to ensure that can be done online, and therefore we have a system that is internet-based, and therefore any applicant can be able to request for service whatever they are in the country, and they can track the process of the approval within the Commission online. And we believe that enhances our visibility. And the other thing is a query system where, for instance, if you want to know the pricing of a commodity in any town, you can be able to send an SMS, and that can be able to give you in any place that you are what the price of the fuel is. And that will go, for instance, in the case where we have auditors in the field who are undertaking various activities for the Commission. If anybody had any doubt with respect to the authenticity of the individuals, you can be able to send an SMS with an ID or staff number, and you have a confirmation SMS of the authenticity of the individual who is undertaking the auditing or whatever else the case may be. So the key thing here is to ensure that our services are valuable and easy and effective to allow people to do their business. I think as a regulator, obligation is to ensure that we are not an inhibitor, but an enabler of business development in the country. Renewable energy is the way to go. As you will appreciate, there has been a lot of concern on global warming, and I think every stakeholder has an obligation at their point to do locally what they need to do to ensure that globally we can be able to win this war on global warming. So renewable energy is a significant contributor in minimizing the impact of global warming. And I think as a country you have done pretty well. When you look at the amount of renewable energy in our generation mix, and the key thing here will be hydro and geothermal, there will be over 80% of the generation mix. Currently, perhaps diesel or fossil-based fuels will be less than 10%. So when you compare this with other countries in the world, we have done pretty well. Not many countries exceed 30% with respect to renewable energy. So we are doing well, and I think the cases you have mentioned of wind and solar, there is a lot of interest. I think the key challenge here is to ensure that the investors have the competence and the financial ability to undertake these projects. But in terms of proposals, we have very many, probably in the region of over 2,000 megawatts, but only a few are able to progress to the point where they can be able to actually have financial closure and then implement the projects. Yes, this has been taken care of in the revised policy and the new bill on energy and petroleum. ERC has been driving this, and we've been chairing the technical committee. And we have taken account of that, because I agree with you that we have to be pretty careful to learn from the best practices and avoid situations where we can be able to have the resources scarce. It will be very unfortunate. So yes, I would confirm that we have taken on board some of the best practices, and some of the team members had in fact to undertake peer-to-peer benchmarking with some of the countries that have done well, and of course learning to avoid what some of the countries have done wrongly. Yes, in preparation of the documentation for these bills, we have of course undertaken a lot of consultation with various stakeholders, and in some cases we have had to travel to the counties and talk with the relevant opinion shapers to be able to ensure that their viewpoints are taken on board. Because we have to agree that if you have to invest in some of these projects and they are capital intensive and long term, you require the participation of the communities. And incidentally, we've had their concerns addressed, because we have provisions in the bill where the national, county, and local communities are provided for with respect to allocation of the resources, be they oil or other resources within the counties. Macro pressures, like now you have of course a concern on the shilling, and the volatility of petroleum prices. As you'll appreciate, energy is a significant issue for every member of society, and hence if it's not predictable, it raises a lot of problem, because when you're an investor in this sector, the key thing that you'd want is to ensure that you can have cash flow to be able to sell your investment to financiers. Because of the huge resources required, usually investors would only provide a small portion as equity and then rely on debt for the balance of the requirements. So investors like predictability. And then, of course, when you look at the prices, for instance, of petroleum, they are volatile. And notwithstanding the fact that we cap the prices, the impact of the changes internationally are reflected locally. And the other significant thing, of course, is the issue of the Kenya shilling. The fact that, for instance, the dollar is strengthening, and in the international market, international trading is done in dollar. And therefore, when you have to convert that for the local market, then the impact of a weaker shilling would have a bearing on consumers. We certainly would be very keen, for instance, to ensure that we are represented regionally. Right now, we are centrally located, but many of our consumers, of course, are spread countrywide. And while we have been traveling, for instance, last week I was in Kisumu. One of the key issues that people raise is that you should be represented at the regional level. Even while you cannot be able to do, for instance, at the county level, maybe we can be able to have regional representation, so that, for instance, we can be represented at the coast or Western Kenya or central. So those will be some of the challenges that we would want to ensure that we can be able to serve our consumers closely. Because, for instance, in issues to do with complaints resolution, which people do not know a lot about, if anybody has a complaint on the power bill, for instance, and you have disagreements with the service provider, you have a recourse to come to the commission to be able to intermediate between the service provider and yourselves. These are issues that people are not aware of. Or, for instance, if there's adulteration of fuel in Meru, for instance, you may probably want to see a representation of the commission there rather than expecting them to drive from Nairobi. So that challenge is there, and we would want to ensure that in the days ahead, we should be able to have a regional representation to be able to be closer to our service provider, and then make it easy for all the services that one may want in the commission, that they can be accessed, for instance, online, and to minimize human intervention so that we can be able to serve our consumers better. Open, consultative, and keen to ensure that I can give my best shot in ensuring that during my term, consumers should be able to get value for money, and be able to ensure that as a commission, we have added value to their life, because energy is a very vital component of people's life. And therefore, to be able, for instance, to ensure that the products that we regulate are competitively priced would be one of the things I would be happy about, to ensure that we've given them the best deal that is possible in the circumstances. I have been in the sector for long. I'm in my third decade in the power industry. I started my work with Kenya Power. Indeed, Kenya Power are the ones who sponsored me to the University of Nairobi. They paid for my fees. They had a program there that is very good. They would look for students from schools and sponsor them for engineering courses, for instance, and others. So I was one of their candidates, and therefore, after I completed university, I joined Kenya Power, and I served with them for 20 years. And after the reforms in the sector, I moved to KenGen in 1997, where I served up to 2010. Then I joined the commission. So I've been in the commission now for, this will be my 4th year. And therefore I look forward, because I'm pretty familiar with the industry, I look forward to be able to use my exposure in the industry to be able to serve consumers now. They need to ensure that people get the best of the circumstances, and also they need to ensure that my decisions have equity in them, that people are treated equally, and therefore you are able to get the best that you can in the circumstances that you are in. We will strive to ensure that whatever pricing that we do is the best that is possibly can, taking account of the various factors that we consider when setting, for instance, the prices of power and petroleum. And we also would want to ensure that they get value for money. And also, I would urge people to look at investors as parties that are crucial in the performance of any market, because they supply the product, and therefore we need to be able to ensure that we can embrace them. We shouldn't be seen like we don't want them, because they are the supplier of the products, and then consumers come and use them, the product. So all of us should be working together to ensure that the market delivers to the expectation of the various players. And that's what a regulator is for, to balance those interests.
Parastatal TV, promoting the role of state corporations.
Parastatal TV.
Parastatal TV.
Parastatal TV.
I think it's a good move. It's a new concept which will actually bring out the story of government.
It's a mouthpiece.
I'm glad you're joining this army of CC fly eradication in Africa.
It's a welcome idea. It's an idea whose time has come.
Without exaggerations or without actually putting more salt or more sugar, I might tell you guys, you are on the right track.
Nobody has ever covered us with what we do. What we get mostly, we get stones thrown at us, what we haven't done, and nobody really looks at what we have done.
Anytime one talks about government, especially in the media, is about the negatives. And truly speaking, is that there's always the positive side of government, which is never highlighted.
Most of the media, actually, and that's most of the cases we have had here, that every time they come and cover, they go and give the wrong feedback or the negative feedback.
Please be part of us. Please help us to disseminate this information so that Africa can be free from this primitive scourge.
Parastatal TV will go a long way to give it that positive story.
The real estate sector in Kenya has seen a boom, with the property market responding to increased demand. In Nairobi, the capital city of Kenya, the rebirth of property development has attracted a global attention. Nairobi was also voted as one of the top 10 cities to watch by global real estate firm. Land in Kenya is seen as a very basic, and no one wants to be forever a tenant. The property industry has therefore seen a surge of real estate companies, with Kenyans buying homes every other day. Suraya Property Limited, a family business, is the pioneer of property development. Parastatal TV had a chat with Peter K. Muraya, the CEO at Suraya, who gave us more insight on Suraya Property Development Kenya. Mr. Muraya is a jovial man, informed and an inspiration to the young generation.
My name is Peter Muraya, an architect by profession, but currently now doing property development. I think it came from the need that we sort of identified that is there in terms of people who are not providing the sort of housing that we are seeing in other countries, especially in places like South Africa, Dubai. So what we had that time was twofold. You either had a house on half acre, or a maisonette, or an apartment. And yet in South Africa they had this sort of small units on small plots, but not half acre, right? But not again maisonettes, fully detached, which is very nice. So we thought, why can't anybody do it? And eventually we realized we had to do it ourselves. We realized if we're going to do this, achieve the vision we had, then who better place than ourselves to actually, action on that. So that's how we started Suraya in 2006. Then, everybody has his strength. Me, I have my strengths, which is mostly the design. Coming from an architectural background, I have the architectural part of the business, which is related to property development, and I understand how to build houses. But Sue comes in with the other side of sales and marketing, which is good at, and which she has not trained, but she's got the natural flair for it. So it works out very well for the company. Land is a big problem, because if you look at the industry, the appreciation of land is roughly per year is maybe 30%, right? Construction, on the other hand, is of variations of 5%. You find the price difference between, let's say, 5 years ago and now. It's maybe 10% over the 5 years or 15% over the 5 years, which is about 3-4% per year. But on land, it's 30% plus. And the amazing thing is there's still a huge demand for it. So no matter what price you put, the developers will buy it. But what it does is that today you find that the cost of the house, if you look at the pricing cost of the house cost, land should not be more than maybe 25-30% of the overall cost of the house. Today, it's actually 50%. If you take an example of a house in Runda, in fact, today in Runda, the house is more expensive. The land might be more expensive than the house, because half an acre might be 30-40 million. You can build a very nice house for 30 million. So you see, in this case, the land is much more expensive than the house. But it creates a very big problem of sales, especially in the high end. Because then a simple house in Runda, you're looking at 60 to 90 million shillings.